the Buckeyes might have the week off, but we do not here on the Buckeye Fever podcast. Thank you so much for joining us on a special bye-week edition. This is going to be therapy for the Buckeye fan. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to separate this show into two halves, and we're going to talk all about what happened up in Eugene, Oregon. There are two types of Buckeye fans in this world. Those of you who think, man, we have the best program in America, it's all going to be okay. Those are my scarlet glasses Buckeye fans. The first half of the show is for you. We're going to talk about why you have nothing to worry about coming off that loss to Oregon. Then there are the, oh my goodness, we're only up 10-7 in the first quarter against Akron. The sky is falling Buckeye fans. The second half of the show will be for you, who likes to hit the panic button and will criticize. So the first half is going to be kind Buckeyes. The second half is going to be critical Buckeyes. So let's start with the good news, and then we'll get to the bad news. First off, if you are a scarlet-colored view Buckeye fan, here's what I would say about this game against Oregon. You lost by a single point on the road in one of the toughest environments of college football when you did everything you could to lose that game. So let's start right there. On a night where it seemingly felt like everything went wrong, you still almost beat the number 3 Oregon Ducks in their house. That house, Autzen Stadium, my first trip there. We were supposed to go there a few years ago, got canceled due to the pandemic. That place was rocking. Capacity's 56,000. They crammed 60,000 in there. It was electric. To the point you could barely hear. And I know the Buckeyes felt the same way because they had 4 false starts and a delay of game. Shot themselves in the foot with penalties all night long. And turnovers. Quinshawn Judkins, who was a man, got outmanned and just had the ball ripped out of his hands that gave Oregon a short field. You had a kickoff that somehow just hit C.J. Hicks. That is a 1 in a million play that gave Oregon a short field. Everything that could have gone against the Buckeyes, for the most part, with the exception of the possible interception, the bang-bang play there, everything went against them, and yet they still only lost by a single point on the road. I think you should feel good about that because I think if these teams meet again in Lucas Oil Stadium on a neutral field, a better Buckeye performance, a neutral field, I think this team's okay. That's the rosy-colored view. We can even go late in the game. Let's talk about the final drive. When Ohio State's 1st and 10 on the 28-yard line, at that point, I would say they're about 80 to 85% likely to win that game. And I remember thinking, hey, Ryan Day, please don't go Peach Bowl here. Don't be content. Get me another 7 to 12 yards. And he tried to. Penalty on Jeremiah Smith, all right? If you have listened to this show, you know I hate blaming on the refs guy. I always say it's the lowest hanging fruit in all of college football, the blame it on the refs guy. It's a tic-tac foul at best. The DB puts his hands on Jeremiah first. He engages. Jeremiah flings him off. He's right at about the 5-yard mark. They throw the flag. It is a pivotal penalty. Now, I'm not going to blame the refs because there are, as I mentioned, a lot of things, penalties, turnovers, things the Buckeyes did not control. Here is, though, what Ryan Day had to say about that call after the game.
We did a great job of getting down the field and continue to fight. But, on the one play there, DB's grabbing on Jeremiah. Jeremiah's fighting there, and they call the flag there, and that cost us. But it shouldn't come down to one play, and you said that before. And we want to leave no doubt, and I felt like we should have done that tonight. We did not, and so then you put it in the the hands of a call, and you don't get it, and that's on us. It should never come down to that situation. We had too many X plays tonight. We turned the ball over in the first half, and it cost us.
So Ryan Day also not making excuses, but he's still frustrated by it, no doubt. And then after that, though, the Buckeyes still have a chance. 6 seconds left on the clock. All right? And we're going to talk about Dan Lanning later in the show when we talk about the pessimistic side of this game. We'll talk about the penalty, the 12 men on the field. We'll get there. That's for the pessimistic Buckeye fan. Right now we're talking positives. Will Howard, with 6 seconds left, decides to tuck it and run. Now, that's a very risky play, and we found out it wasn't worth the risk. There's actually a great screen grab of him getting ready to slide, and you see Will looking up at the scoreboard. He's trying to get down with 1 second left. Originally, the referee blows the whistle and tells the Buckeyes get back on the sideline, and he tries to keep the fans off the field, to the point that my photographer was getting ready to run on the field and shoot the post-game celebration, and I pulled him back and said, no, look at that ref. It's not over. I thought they still had a half second left on the clock. Then they look at it, they decide they don't. A bang play. Once again, every little thing that could have gone against Ohio State did, and yet they still only lost by 1 on the road to Oregon. Here's what Will Howard had to say after the game. Let's listen to his explanation of that final play.
Thought I did, obviously didn't. I worried about trying to get enough yards to make the field goal and get us into field goal range. But we gotta go back and look at it and figure out what we did wrong there. And I gotta get down, I guess, and it's all good. We gotta learn from it.
Okay, and I saw a lot of people wanting to beat Will Howard up on social media. This is not the game to beat Will Howard up. Now, again, I don't love the decision there to tuck and run. Maybe you just throw it out of bounds, live another day, at least get the kick attempt off. But he had a really good game, and he didn't turn the ball over. He played well. I don't blame Will Howard one bit for this loss. Okay, let's wrap up the rosy-colored view of this game. You still control your own destiny. The Buckeyes get Indiana at home, Penn State on the road. If you win out, you're going to Lucas Oil Stadium. You'll get the Ducks again on a neutral field. The other rosy point of view here is the Buckeyes are going to the playoffs. They clearly have the respect of the nation and the voters because they kept them over teams like Miami, teams like Alabama, teams that they don't believe in with similar or better records. So the Buckeyes can still probably drop one more game, honestly, and get in the playoff in a new 12-team field. So if you are a glasses half full Buckeye fan, everything seemingly went wrong. Penalties, turnovers, bad clock management. You still almost won the game. You still control your own destiny. Everything's right in front of you. You could still beat Michigan, still win the Big Ten, still win the national title, right? Those are the 3 goals every year. They're all still in front of you. All this was a very entertaining 3.5-hour football game. But we're not going to end the show here. We're going to get pessimistic. When we come back, let's get cranky, Buckeye Nation. Let's sulk in our misery. Coming up next on the Buckeye Fever podcast. All right, at this point, hopefully all of my scarlet-colored, glasses half-full Buckeye fans have shut off the podcast. They're outside, prancing in a dewy meadow, loving life, because it's all going to be okay. Now, you Buckeye fans, the ones who I hear murmuring at the shoe when Ohio State only wins by 35, and you talk about how bad we looked out there. We only won 42-7. Oh, Buckeye fans, the negative ones. Let's dig in. Let's get pessimistic here. All right, here's why I'm pessimistic coming out of this Oregon game. Because the vaunted defense, the Silver Bullets, once again in a big game, looked like BBs. They weren't bullets. They were BBs. They came into this game ranked number 1 in the nation in points allowed, number 1 in the nation in yards allowed, averaging 202 yards per game. And a lot of people said, yeah, who have they played? And that was a fair point because Iowa and Michigan State are not elite offenses, and we all know the non-conference was a bunch of cupcakes. This was their first true test. They gave up 496 yards. The most they've given up since the Georgia Peach Bowl. So when the Buckeyes get in a big game situation, for whatever reason, their defense cannot get off the field. Now, in fairness to that defense, Ohio State's offense and special teams gave them a couple short fields. That is not on them. And in fairness to the Ohio State defense, Dylan Gabriel's the best quarterback they're going to face all year. There's a reason he was going through that pipeline at Oklahoma with all the other great QBs. He's an elite talent. 23 years old. He had a great read and pull where he ran for the touchdown. So you do have to credit Oregon. This is a really good offense, and no one's holding Oregon to 200 yards all year. You can book that. But the pessimistic side of me says, why, oh, why is it that every time Ohio State gets in a big game, that defense can't seem to get off the field? Let's get pessimistic about Josh Simmons. Injured by all accounts. Ryan Day says it looks like he's out for the year. Josh Simmons, if you look at the nerdy offensive line metrics, which sadly I do, you can make a case as the best offensive lineman on Ohio State's team. And going into this season, my biggest question mark was the offensive line. Now you remove a pivotal piece the rest of the year. And on an Ohio State team where it seems like every year the question is toughness in trenches, you now may have lost arguably your best player on that offensive line. That's devastating moving forward. You should not feel great about the offensive line right now if you're an Ohio State fan. Another pessimistic view here. I mentioned penalties and clock management, and I said, hey, everything went wrong and the Buckeyes almost won the game. The other way to look at it, my pessimistic Buckeye fans, is why does everything always go wrong in these big games? That's the other way to look at it. Why, when the bright lights get the brightest, are the Buckeyes having issues with penalties and clock management? Some of it was the crowd, some of it's composure. And really those two interlock at times. Ryan Day going into this game was 41-3 in the Big Ten. We can all guess what the three losses are, right? Blue, blue, blue. He's now 41-4. And Oregon has gotten him twice. They came to the shoe as a Pac-12 team a few years ago and beat Ryan Day. So the pessimistic side of me would say not only does Ryan Day have a Michigan problem, he now has an Oregon problem because these Ducks aren't flying anywhere. They are now in the Big Ten, competing with Ohio State as the premier program in your own conference, and they've beaten you twice in the last 4 years. To me, that's concerning. I'm not ready to say full-on power shift in the conference. I think Ohio State still is the brand, but there's someone tugging at their cape, and it's out in Eugene, Oregon. Not to mention Michigan, who clearly is down this year, but still an issue until the Buckeyes beat them this year. Still an issue. From a coaching standpoint, Dan Lanning intentionally sends 12 men on the field. He admitted that finally. That was on purpose. Or maybe someone said, hey, Dan, you look like a genius. And he said, yes, I did. That was on purpose now that I think about it. I don't know. But it seemed like it was on purpose. He sends a 12th man out in the field. Oregon gets a penalty. It only costs them 5 yards. And the dumbest thing about this rule, which they just changed a few years ago, it's a live ball penalty. So the clock ticked. So the Buckeyes only got 5 yards but lost valuable time on the clock. So Dan Lanning's out here playing chess. All right. I will say this. The first episode of the Buckeye Fever podcast, I opened with Ryan Day's legacy. And I talked about how Ryan Day is one of the most complex people to analyze because he's just a few plays off from being a multi-time national champion. And yet, he's not. And I pointed to the Georgia Peach Bowl game that they coulda, shoulda won, if not for a target, a Marvin, a kick, all sorts of things. I pointed to the Clemson playoff game, which they coulda, shoulda, woulda won, if not for a drop pass, a couple terrible calls. Everything went against them that night. So then you have to ask yourself, I'm still talking to my pessimistic Buckeye fan, do teams lose big games because they inherently don't have it in them in the big moment, or is our entire world statistical and random and the Buckeyes are just running cold? Are you a everything is random and chance person? Because if you're that person, you would say, hey, Tom Brady won 6 Super Bowls. And you know what? The first 5 of them came down to the final play. Could have gone either way. He lost 3 Super Bowls. And you know what? All 3 of those losses were one-score games. Tom Brady could be 9-0 in Super Bowls, or he could be 1-8 in Super Bowls. Purely based on randomness? Or is Tom Brady such a winner, do those people always find a way? And to me, that's my big question with this Ohio State team. Why is it that they seemingly come up short in these games? Is this a small sample size, 6, 8, 10 games? Or is there something here that they just come up short? And to me, that is how we look at this Oregon game. The scarlet-colored fans, the glasses half full, are going to say it was one game, 1 point, one night with a ton of mistakes. We'll be better. And my pessimistic fans who are still listening are going to say it was just another game, just another mistake, just another night that we should have won the game. And I'm there for both of you because I think you both have a case. That'll do it for this What Happened in Eugene, Oregon episode of the Buckeye Fever podcast. Next week, Buckeyes back at home against a seemingly upstart Nebraska team, and Mr. Raiola comes to town. That should be fun. We'll see you back here next week for the Buckeye Fever podcast.